Hi everyone and welcome to episode 5 of Novel Therapy. I'm Kate Fennessy, aspiring author and social media marketer.
And I'm New York Times bestselling author Helen Brown.
And Helen today has really fabulous earrings on that say yes, yes.
And Kate is wearing wonderful red lipstick.
It's true, I am.
I wonder what these two girls are up to.
Oh my God, it's so true. Oh dear. So we've had a week off.
Maybe that's it.
Possibly.
Yeah.
It could be that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
You were in Sydney last week. How did that go?
Oh, it was fantastic. Catching up with my publishers there, getting all sorts of just ideas pouring from the sky. No rain, actually. And I've been doing a bit of dancing, slightly in preparation for today. I've been trying to get back into my body, so I've got the Spotify working, which is difficult for me, and playing stuff that really, like Joni Mitchell, you probably never heard of her.
I have.
But people who bring back life and wonderful memories, and it's just beautiful dancing. So I've been doing a bit of that, even dragged Philip onto the floor. So yeah.
I love this update. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's great.
Oh, that's $1 for the jar.
It's because I've had a week off.
Well, we've got to get back onto that.
Yeah, I do have to get back onto that.
Yeah.
And what else has been happening in your, because this is our checkup pre our clinic, we have a bit of a checkup. So what else has been happening? Anything else in your world?
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed when you're coming up the path, I've been doing a bit of gardening because we used to have a big rosemary hedge, which I planted in my mum's honour because she loved rosemary for remembrance, and that hedge went crazy and it grew right over the path, so we had to pull it out. And gardening to me is a wonderful thing if you need healing, if you've lost any hope in the future. You're planting a seed, you're planting a seedling. That's proof that there will be a future, you know? So I think if you're going through a tough time, there's nothing like planting something to make you invest in the future, even if it's just something in a flower pot.
I love that. It's quite symbolic, isn't it?
It's deeper than that even.
Yeah.
It's connecting with nature and acknowledging the rhythms. I planted that whole garden out the front after I'd had breast cancer, and I planted it very consciously with symbols in it. Even the round fountain, that's a symbol of my healthy breast.
That's a big breast, just bursting with life. I love that. I just noticed it when I walked in this morning.
So yeah, it's a place of meditation and healing. So if you're listening and you can't write and you can't knit or paint, or you can do all those things, do a garden as well. I also read somewhere that gardeners live 2.5 years longer, though who knows what that means.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel similarly that I've been having a time of looking at my whole home, my house, and just going, I want to spring clean it from the back fence to the front. I want to weed and just continue to declutter. I've sort of decluttered some spaces, and I feel like when I do that, I start owning them. It's like moving in again, because I moved in a time of extreme distress actually, because my marriage had just ended. So I moved in like you would to a refuge or something, like just minimum, just.
And you know, it's interesting you mentioned weeding, because I find weeding very symbolic. You're digging up unwanted stuff from the past and discarding it. And if you spend an hour or two weeding, you can feel really cleansed after that.
Yeah, well, that's good encouragement, because my weeds, I get a bit overwhelmed because I let them grow wild in the back because I don't really use the outdoor space, but I feel the need to weed. It's arising in me. Sorry, I nearly made that joke on her teeth. And just another little update from my world, which is related to my homework, my diagnosis from 2 weeks ago. I have watched nearly all of season 1 of Glow since you recommended that I do, and it has been so fantastic. Because I'd already watched Fleabag. I might watch Fleabag again, but I've sort of done the whole season, whereas Glow is so fabulous. And what I'm finding immediately is just how deliciously the characters are so well done. Like, they're a little bit exaggerated, a little bit crazy, a little bit bonkers, but they have depth, they have truths to them that when they come out are really like strong moments, are really powerful because of everything else, because they're kooky, crazy, and a little bit, you know, like for example, I think it's Debbie who plays Liberty Bell, the blonde, one of the main characters. When she got handed her divorce papers in season 1, you know, the actress, credit to her, she really broke down. Like, despite the fact she was dressed in this ridiculous costume in this ridiculous context, she broke down like you would expect anyone to when their life has just been handed to them on a piece of paper like that, a moment like that. And I just thought, wow, there's real depth to it, but there's playfulness.
Yes. And if you can somehow transfer that complexity to the characters in your novel, you'll be on a winning streak.
That's the takeaway I got out of it. It was just those moments where, and there was another moment in the car, I think with Sam, the director, and what's the main girl's name?
Is it Ruth?
Ruth.
Yeah.
Where he actually summed her up really, really insightfully. And I thought, wow, he really does see who she is, even though he acts like an asshole. Yeah. Even though he's this and that,
deeply
and he's weak
flawed.
and broken. Deeply flawed.
Yeah.
Really, they're both deeply flawed.
Yeah.
They all are. They all are.
And this is what will grab you into a book, you know, because if you can do that with your characters, we'll love it.
That diagnosis has been incredibly helpful, like all my clinic visits.
Oh, good.
I'm improving in leaps and bounds in my whole life. But Glow, I have to reverberate the recommendation to others. It is pretty fabulous.
The thing is though, Kate, when you start watching these television series as a writer,
it's a different
you see them
experience.
differently, and you're constantly analysing what's happening, and it actually makes it a very rewarding experience, more so than just straight entertainment.
Yeah, that's true. I've definitely looked at it differently, and in thinking out loud, I probably should revisit Fleabag for the same reason, because I watched it as a viewer.
Go back and watch it.
I'll go back and watch it as a writer. Yeah, that's a good point actually. So thank you for that diagnosis. Glow is pretty hilarious. Oh dear. So we will move on. We've had our checkup.
Today
we'll open the clinic. I think it's time.
Well, as you stepped inside, apart from my yes earrings, did you notice these beautiful flowers
I
got from
very beautiful.
Kate Hill, the florist across the road? And I said, well, this friend and I are going to do a podcast today, maybe about writing sex scenes. And she said, oh, it's a podcast about sex. And I said, well,
it is today.
Not really. And I've done some other things. You may notice this candle burning up there. That's fig perfume. I was trying to make the room really sensual for you today, Kate.
You
did. I bought these beautiful little carrot cakes.
I'll just grab one.
Well, the people who are watching might be able to see them, but if you're just listening, I was in the deli and I was trying to see the most sensuous looking cakes, and these ones probably took the cake because they've got little squishy pink things on top. It could be anything. It could be lips. It could just be lips. Yeah.
Nipples.
No, well, you never know. You never know.
Or even other parts of the female anatomy.
Yeah, so I thought today we would get into our sensual selves, because that's a good start, I think. Not that I've written much sex, actually, because my family is so tired of being written about. I think it would be terribly exposing if they thought, oh, there's mum having multiple orgasms. That wouldn't go down well. But let's start by going into sensual memories. And can you think of something from your youth or childhood, a moment when you felt totally alive, connected and joyous?
Yes. So when I was younger, my dad grew up in the Edithvale, Chelsea area, part of Melbourne, which is on the bay, and he, like me, has fair skin. So he would love to take me to the beach, but only after the sun was starting to set. These are on very warm Melbourne nights when it would have been 35 plus in the daytime, so it would be still quite warm enough to swim. Dad and I would drive down. I reckon I was about 10. And I don't know why, I guess it was just his idea, but we'd drive down to Edithvale Beach, we'd get into the bay, always calm water, and I guess that was getting nighttime. So my memory is of being really at one with just Dad, and I have a memory of we'd either hold our breath and maybe swim, see how many strokes you could swim, like in competition with each other. And I used to love, actually, I was thinking the other day about this, that I used to love doing backwards tumble dives in the water.
Wow, you could do that.
Yep, I could just leap backwards.
Didn't it go up your nose?
No, you breathe out the air through your nose.
Oh, I didn't
That's
know
the
that.
trick. You go.
Now I know.
Yeah, that's the trick. Otherwise, it would go up your nose. And I probably thought I was pretty cool doing that when I was 10. And just floating. I remember floating with Dad, the holding our breath competitions. But what I remember more, and I still sometimes do this on a really hot day. If my daughter Emmy was listening, she'd roll her eyes and go, Mum, we hardly ever go to the beach. But I still have that habit of going at night. Or at the end of the day, post 5 o'clock when the sun's not going to burn you anymore. The vibe of the beach has changed. Down at Mount Eliza, I like Canadian Bay, and people might be having beers and fish and chips on the beach. And the same thing, there's something happens to me when I get to that point where you can just, your eye and the horizon all just blends into that still bay water.
Beautiful.
And it's just cool and,
Well, this could be a scene to put in your book.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think it sounds so beautiful and unique, really, because people living in other parts of the world can't just wander down to a beach and don't understand that moment where that dry heat we get here at the end of those summer days.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
But I also have another memory that's quite painful to do with nature, which is to do with when Mum died. I remember very early on, it's almost like a bit of a dream, this memory, but I know it happened. I got into an early relationship, just not even a relationship, like I was dating someone for a little while, and I got really upset one night, and I don't know, it sounds a bit crazy, but I ended up going to a park and I was actually clawing at the ground. And like, I know that sounds crazy, but I was crying. And
How old were you then?
This would have been 21 after Mum died. Yeah, this was that was in that very early time.
Yeah.
I just remember crying, and I remember thinking, she's in the ground.
Yeah. I think you can forgive yourself lots of sorts of weird behaviour when you're in grief.
I really feel that man who witnessed that must just think, wow. Although years later we bumped into each other when he'd become a dad at a child.
Who witnessed you doing this?
Yeah. I always felt like he must think, oh my God.
Be good for him. Be good for him.
Maybe.
And
so
I think,
was another one. Yeah,
interesting. I've been thinking about my essential connections, which I don't have a uterus, I don't have ovaries, I've only got one boob. So I have very little hormonal connection to the world. I'm practically my own gender. But, thinking about this it made me realise I'm still a sensual being, and I love that wonderful candle smell, and I have the perfume of that fig because it's kind of androgynous, I suppose. But no, I love that. I love the smell of flowers. And you think about our senses, flowers are great because they appeal visually and to our sense of smell.
Yeah.
And then there's the sense of touch. When my friend Douglas was dying, he was gay and he loved rose perfume, and I remember massaging his feet and the ecstasy on his face. We never lose that touch, that need for touch.
Yeah, massage and fragrance and all those often feminine things. Yeah, even just my routine with hand creams and
loving yourself.
Sprays. Yeah,
I always feel like paying for a massage is kind of different. I always feel like I'd love someone to be doing this for love.
Yeah.
No, not just for the $60 or whatever.
That's
it is.
true.
So we've got taste, visual, sound. Well, that's where I've enjoyed music.
Yeah.
I never have music on when I write. I don't know how people do that.
No.
It's like having the view of the window. It's an extra
it's too distracting.
stimulation I can't have. Yeah.
I'm the same, but I could listen to vocalless music, like music.
Could you?
Possibly, but only probably not though. I tend to like to work and write in silence. That's my preferred. But music's definitely, music's something that I can get lost in.
I can imagine. I've seen you dancing. Yeah, you love dancing.
We've seen each other dancing.
Yeah,
that was cute. On the dance floor. We should pull out one of those photos of you and Philip dancing.
Oh, well, no, maybe not. But look at the other thing, food. Food is love.
Yeah,
I realise that is the
true.
way I cook for my granddaughters. There's so much love in that.
Yeah.
And, food is very essential to me. And I was over at Teaspoon where Tara works the day or the day before, and there was this fabulous looking cake in there, and all the customers were oogling it, and I said, doesn't that make you want to tear your clothes off and roll in it? And There was an awkward silence. And the lovely young woman behind the counter, it wasn't Tara, said, well, that's a new one.
That's so funny. We're so aligned because this week I went to a spontaneous cards night in Frankston. One of my friends, Sarah, and has gathered this little group and we play Cards Against Humanity.
Oh, I guess I know that game, yeah.
So we did the other night and I said the same thing about my favourite red curry, and I said when it's a good one I could have a bath of it and ladle it to myself, and everyone looked shocked as well. They were like, but you'd get burnt. I was like, no, in my imagination.
Yeah, it would be sort of tepid.
It would be warm and luscious.
Yeah.
And
I haven't read a lot of erotic fiction, but I wonder how much of it does revolve around food.
Gosh. No, but it's a lovely thing to be aware of, and thinking of those memories, particularly with Dad and music. I think the other thing with me was, as a kid, I think we talked about this in maybe the first episode, I would often get I wanted to immerse myself in music to the point where I'd play an album. We had vinyls back in the day, and I would lie on the floor. I don't know why. I like to lie on the floor and just transport myself.
Encompassed. Yeah, that's
always loved that.
That's wonderful. I think that's a very deep human kind of need, that connection. Again, with the non-physical. We mustn't go there. But look, I think this is a perfect segue into you reading us your sex scene. I think you're a real natural at this. So
wow, okay.
I hope you're all ready and waiting out there in podcast land.
Yes, far out.
For Kate's fabulous sex scene.
I've never written a sex scene before, but I just wrote this in one go. So anyway, shall we do it?
Yeah. Well, the candle's lit, the flowers.
It's true. The cupcake's staring at me. Okay. So I'm just going to dive in. Maybe it was the new semi-beard, or the wine had got to her head. The fire, the music, the tears, but she didn't want to stop kissing him. She wanted more of his lips. No fertility window, no pressure, just her and her husband, just their bodies, and her sudden desire. She lowered herself onto him, astride him, which she never usually did. They were going to fuck here, in front of the fire, which they also never did. She pulled off her jumper, hurriedly opened her shirt and his, and pulled his face into her cleavage. She wanted him to suck her breasts, the breasts that had betrayed her, for them to just be hers, just be for her. She pulled down her bra and let them spill out, directing her nipple to his open mouth, her hands to finger her deeply. She was so clear about what she wanted and needed from him, and she kissed him more and more until she was slippery and wet and Jake was hard. She unbuttoned his pants and he let out a whimper as she eased herself onto him, feeling the texture of his rough jaw with her fingers, the soft hair on his chest and the bed of hair around his erection. She grabbed at him harder, harder still, until she bit his shoulder and he moaned as he came, the slight surprise in his eyes enough to tip her over too. She rose carefully, unmounted herself and kissed him on the nose. I'll get that dinner for you then. His eyes widened and he patted her on the bum as she pulled her clothes back on in front of the fire.
See, I think that's pretty damn good.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I was quite immersed there.
I wonder if I was meant to beep out the F word, probably.
Well, yes, I wonder, we should have perhaps had a warning at the beginning.
Yes, I can put it on now. Well, you can change the rating of it anyway.
You see, it's notoriously difficult to write good porn, and they have that competition every year, the Literary Review Bad Sex Award.
Really?
And even highly esteemed authors end up on that. Shortlisted this year was Haruki Murakami, who is regarded as a kind of god. Yeah. And see, we're being very open here. Yes. Let me read you his little
Please do.
Phrase that won him
God.
this shortlist award.
Okay.
I slipped my erect penis inside. Or, from another angle, that part of her actively swallowed my penis, immersing it in what felt like warm butter.
No one wants to feel like warm butter. Did you say it swallowed it?
Swallowed my penis. You see, it's usually men who win these bad sex awards, and when I've been reading a few of them, and it's so penis oriented. It's so oriented towards their pleasure, and it's so disconnected emotionally.
Yeah.
And I think writing about sex, I think you're doing there, it's bringing in that part of the emotional life of the characters. It's not a
Yeah.
mechanical thing.
No.
If it's strictly mechanical, it's ridiculous. It's immersing your penis in butter. Anyway, well done, Kate.
That's so funny. Thank you. Oh my goodness.
So I don't
That's
think you'll be on the Bad Sex Award. Anyway, as I mentioned,
That is so
I'm going to
funny.
read you a bit of my nearest sort of attempts at
Okay.
sex, right? And it's in my novel Tumble Down Manor. Stop laughing.
I know, I'm thinking about it.
And look, this character, Lisa, has no relationship at all to anyone living or dead. So please don't put my face in. But anyway,
She's not
Lisa is a writer. She's bought this tumble down house in Castlemaine that belonged to her grandmother or father, I can't remember now. And she's trying to write a sex scene because she's under pressure from her publisher to get this book in, this historical fiction she's writing based on Emily Bronte, who's having an affair, or nearly, with a stable hand. Lisa wriggled her toes inside her Ugg boots. She squared her shoulders in front of the computer screen. It was about time Emily Bronte got down and dirty with Frederick the stable hand. Writing about squelching, writhing bodies used to be pleasurable, if not, as some critics had pointed out, her forte. Lately it had become a chore. She could barely remember the mechanics of it, let alone the out-of-body highs she used to experience when she was younger. Every time she tried to conjure up a sexy man, he ended up wearing enormous work boots and a goofy smile. So readers had also become hardened lately. Even literary writers were churning out porn to give their sales a boost. Depravities that were barely legal were now in demand. She'd heard throttling was in vogue. So that's, she
that's
creeps
nice.
towards writing about sex and,
But
she's constantly interrupted.
Yeah, but I love that because in attempting to write about sex, we just learnt so much about that character and what's perhaps going on for her in her life. And there's kind of a sadness there, but it's also, it's funny. And just the words like squelching.
It's a chore, yes.
That's actually a good way to realise too that a sex scene can do more than just be about the act of the sex. Like that was actually about a lot more.
Yeah.
About where that character's at, isn't it?
And a lot of writers apparently need little triggers before they start writing a sex scene. I think there was one male writer, and I can't remember who it was, had special socks that he put on when he was. And that's why she's wearing Ugg boots. And Lisa, and she's obviously no relation of mine, usually needed chocolate for sex scenes. Protein bars didn't cut it. Green and Black's white chocolate was good for extramarital affairs. 80% cocoa for enduring passion. Warm feet were also essential, hence the Ugg boots. Happily, they doubled as insulation against the bluestone floor. So
I love it. So it's like talking about the emotional state of writing a sex scene. That's really cool. I love it. Yeah.
Without getting too gynecological, because I'm a coward.
Well, look, I just dived into that one.
No, I think that's brilliant. And look, I think that
Yeah.
demonstrates the difference between our generations too. You're bold and your readers are going to be your age, and I think they're going to really relate to that.
Hopefully. And the thing that I've got up my sleeve, or in my mind anyway, is that I want there to be a massive contrast between that sex scene and some future ones that are going to be very different between the husband and the affair ones.
How are they going to be different?
Actually, in saying that though, I don't know if I'll have to work out if I'm allowed. You know, when you've got one main character, you can still describe other scenes without them in it though, can't you? Yeah, because I want to show a totally different side to him with a different lover, basically, and make that seem completely different. So I've already got that working in the back of my mind somehow, that this other woman who has sex with the same man, it's going to be a totally different experience. That'll set that one I just read into stark contrast.
Yeah.
That's something I want to do.
Yeah, that sounds good. And honestly, I don't think you can get too explicit, really. That my dad wrote a porno that I am a bit obsessed with, though. If I listened to 2 episodes, has been downloaded 180 million times. So
So,
There's a market.
Look at the success of 50 Shades. Did you ever read that?
Yes, I did, and it was so poorly.
It was so poorly written, but it was quite engaging.
Was it? Did you like being tied up and all of that stuff?
I have to just admit the pure voyeurism of it, the unusual nature of reading stuff like that, it interested me. I felt the same. It was very poorly written, like to the point of, you know how the character kept saying, "Oh my."
That's
right.
right.
Oh my God.
Yes,
Stop
please
saying,
stop
"Oh my."
it. Yes, that should go in the sweater along with Jeremy and
Exactly, amazing, which I already said this morning.
You're not allowed to say oh my.
No. But no, I do have to admit, you know why? Because I feel like it was groundbreaking without wanting to give it too much credit, because it was. You didn't read stuff like that. That's why I read it. But I didn't read on.
I didn't want any daughter of mine to be tied up by some
it was problematic.
I think it's probably pre-#MeToo. I don't think it would go down now. I hope not.
I agree, but again, I think that was part of its appeal, was that you knew that you weren't supposed to like it. You knew it wasn't healthy, and you knew you weren't supposed to want to be dominated by a man, or you weren't supposed to be attracted to a man with so many complex issues. But there it was, and that's, I think, part of the appeal. But is it something that you'd be proud to give the world? No. Like, I wouldn't want to write that. I wouldn't want that to be what I gave the world. I don't think it's really anything other than like a Dan Brown type of book. It's designed to be a bestseller.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
I think did it start as fan fiction? I can't remember.
Yeah. But I just think it's so poorly written. It's not someone trying to give something to the world.
But back to sex.
Yes.
It's such a mechanical process, and look, really, you'd laugh, really, wouldn't you, if you were an alien and you arrived on Earth and they said that's what we do to reproduce.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that well, except for a few blokes maybe. It's not that's riveting to me. It is the extension of the relationship.
That's right.
And I think that's what transports it from soft porn or porn into fiction.
Yeah, well, that's why I like your version of it in Tumbledown Manor, because it's actually using a sex scene to tell the story, but you're not actually talking about the sex scene. So I think that's interesting. And I don't want sex to be a big part of my story either, but it's going to have to feature a few times because it's about an affair.
Yeah, no, great. I've got Lisa doing what I've told you, actually. I think never use the word penis. Lisa agreed it was an ugly noun. You see, she's gone and Googled how to write a sex scene. She ran through some alternatives. I won't share those with you right now. So attention to detail is essential. Let the reader know if buttons and or zips are involved. Frederick probably had buttons because he's back in Victorian times. And it says, make sure the man removes his socks. I don't know if that's just a quirky thing of the person who wrote this. And this is an interesting one. Don't forget contraception. But your character is desperate to get pregnant,
exactly.
So it's a different thing. But maybe the affair scene, he might be into contraception.
Yes, that's a good point, actually, because he won't be wanting to have a baby outside of the marriage.
And see, here you are ahead of your time, really. It says couples seldom climax simultaneously in real life. Decide who's going to come first and why.
Good.
And so my poor character, Lisa, after reading all of this, she's decided that Frederick would be first over the finishing line because he was so masculine and physical. But that would leave Emily stranded. Lisa decided to make him a kind of tantric master. She willed sentences to straggle across the scene, which you didn't have to do this. So Lisa's type, she could feel his throbbing member. How could she sink to such a creaky cliche? The folds of her brain pleated in on themselves as she hammered the delete button. There was no option but to raid her stash of liqueur-flavoured chocolate.
Love it. Wow, it's so cool.
It's just...
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, it's interesting to just think about how to not handle it in cliche. And I think Jude, who you spoke to last week in Sydney, said that on a little live. We posted the live on
had a little bit too much Prosecco, sorry.
That's on theme with our podcast. But I think Jude mentioned when people can't adequately explain things, they resort to cliche. So that's something to avoid. But yeah, no, these are all good thoughts. I think.
And look, if you're desperate, you can get this thesaurus out, can't you? You know, if you're looking for another word for penis, or maybe.
But see, it's, as you say in the sex scene I read, she climbed onto him and she had her way with him.
Yeah, I like that.
Because she got taken by the moment.
Yes.
So it wasn't really about him and his penis as much as it was about her desire suddenly.
Yeah.
And the fact that she surprised him is what I wanted to focus on too.
Excuse me while I lift this throbbing pen. Oh.
Oh, that's so good. Who knows what the next iteration of this podcast will be? We could go off into a whole new direction.
No, I think we'll safely return to structure.
We could run workshops one day, Helen. Writing a sex scene with Helen and Kate.
I think you'd definitely take the lead. I'd be the amateur.
Now I do, before we wind up into Planet Social, because I think we're just on the 30-minute mark, which is where we like to stick to. I know, it really does. I do have a quick question for you about, I think you mentioned scrapbooks and notebooks. I was just wondering what your tips are for, I've got an idea how to do it, but how do I capture these character arcs, or how do you capture character arcs in a scrapbook?
Look, I think we need to talk about that more in full
detail.
next time. But look, in the meantime, am I up to giving you your homework?
Give me my homework, please. Yes.
I think did you buy a notebook?
Yes, I bought a notebook and a scrapbook.
Yeah, I know some people are very good, and probably you are, at putting notes in your phone. But to me,
I put them on an app in my desktop. Yeah.
Oh, but to me, there's nothing stronger than just having a little notebook. Once you're in the flow of having to churn out, I shouldn't use that word, produce a certain number of words, you suddenly become a scavenger for ideas, for sentences, for dialogue. And you'll be walking along the beach or you'll be in the car and you'll hear something on the radio or you'll see something.
And you need to capture
write it down. And when I've been in the throes of a book, you write those things in your notebook, and it's amazing. Ooh, there goes
$1 each.
$1 each today.
That's okay.
But you'll be surprised by how much of that will go straight into your book because
it came to you.
Yeah, and your subconscious is already living in that world, and
that makes sense. So I need a small notebook that I can have on my person, like in my handbag.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're having lunch with a friend and she says something that's hilarious or angry, that's just perfect. So I would also recommend this to our aspiring writers out there. Cool. Nothing beats a little notebook. Doesn't have to be fancy. Doesn't have to have flowers on it. Just tiny.
Or just pink petals and figs.
Just
cut figs.
So next time we meet, stop giggling.
I know.
Next time we meet. I'd like to see a notebook with some stuff in it.
Great.
With some observations in it that are in tune with what you're writing about.
Yeah, nice.
Or even maybe not. Even that scene that you talked about with your dad, that could be turned into something beautiful. And we need to talk about setting, where you're setting this book.
All right. Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Sounds like it definitely needs to be near a beach.
Yeah, I think so. Well, that's where I live at the moment, and I think that's a nice context, and that part of Melbourne doesn't get written about all the time. It tends to more be inner city, I feel like. The Melbourne books I've read, I think it's a Bayside novel, possibly Frankston. Yeah.
Oh, you'll get a wonderful launch party there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So that's my diagnosis. Notebook.
Definitely.
Good.
And I think AAA for the sex scene.
Thank you. I wonder if they can see me blushing on the YouTube. Well, thank you. I mean, that's great because I honestly didn't know. I just had a crack at it. But I think it's in me.
Definitely. I would say definitely.
It's in me. I'm just going to turn into a giggling idiot.
But the thing is, probably if next time you do have a sexual encounter, part of you will be on the ceiling watching you thinking, oh yes, that's a good, yes, I must put that in. And that's fine too.
Good.
I think men are terrified of women laughing at them in the bedroom, and as a writer you have even greater power, so don't tell whoever it is that you might be writing about sex.
Noted. Oh gosh, far out. Okay, so to finish up, I'm just going to quickly touch on a topic that always comes up in the world of social, which is hashtags, because I present on social from time to time. And I always get asked the hashtag question, but what even is a hashtag? You know, a lot of people still don't understand it. So I just thought I'd quickly touch on that this week. So my thoughts on hashtags are they do matter. Some people are very focused on hashtags. Other people say, oh, they don't matter. I think the truth lies somewhere in between. I think they're part of your armory of tools on social media.
Is there a kind of shaming involved though if you put too many hashtags?
No, there used to be. I feel like in the past it seemed a bit tacky. Nowadays it's pretty common practice, and I think people tune out. Like they don't notice it anymore. So where it used to look a bit desperate, I think nowadays it's par for the course and no judgment. I've got 3 simple rules when it comes to using hashtags. Rule 1 is that your hashtags ought to be about what your audience cares about and is searching for. So for a writer, things like book lover, book lovers, or for an aspiring writer, as is the audience for our our podcast here, would be things like novel writing, writer's tips, writing ideas. So I would say the first thing is to always think about your audience, not you. So cat lovers,
Same with writing a book.
Yeah, well, that's true. They're flags. So essentially, to try and summarize what a hashtag is, it's a content flag mechanism for these platforms. It tells these platforms this post is about cats because it says.
So when you hashtag, sometimes I've gone and looked, and sometimes my post has gone on to that other site, and sometimes it doesn't. What's that about?
So on Instagram, for example, when you click on any hashtag, you will see generally the summary of the top 9 posts at any given time under that hashtag, and then the rest will be in chronological order. So this is sort of related to rule number 2. You want to use hashtags that aren't over the top popular. For example, the hashtag, if you did hashtag love, right? Or hashtag
cats.
Yes, it's too big.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
So this is a good tip. I would recommend, this is rough, but try and get hashtags that are between about, say, 10,000 and about 4 to 5 million only. Some of them are hundreds of millions of posts, like cat ones. Ones that are too general, like hashtag Instagram, it'll be too big. Hashtag love, hashtag beauty. Anything that's too generic or would have been too popular, because what that means is there's so many posts there that if you refresh the screen, you'll just see your post disappear within milliseconds. It's too popular.
Wow.
So you need to get a bit more niche. And what you'll find is that, say, mummy bloggers that I've worked with for brands, for example, they're really good at their hashtags because they've refined them over perhaps years, and they know where their audience is hanging out. So they might have really specific ones like real mum style, or whatever they've figured out is their niche.
Wow.
And it'll be one that's not overly used. And the reason you know hashtags work is because if you go to any hashtags, if you click on any hashtag in Instagram, you will see that those top 9 posts generally are full of hashtags. So the people who've got in there are using hashtags to get there. So hashtags do work, but try and make sure you're not using overly popular ones. So that's a tip.
Well, Jonah just started doing his own hashtag, which is hashtag Jonah is not a cat, and I don't think anybody's following that.
Well, there you go. Be the first to follow hashtag Jonah is not a cat, and it's good. That's what we call a branded hashtag. So that's creating your own hashtag.
Like nobody wants to follow that.
Well, just keep letting them know, and then but real, true, hardcore Jonah fans, once they cotton onto it, will follow it. So things like novel therapy, no one probably knows. They're not following that, but I still use it when we post because in time, it's a categorization tool. So anyone could look at that hashtag in a year and see all the pictures of us. So branded hashtags are good as well. And my last tip, rule number 3, is still to use I've said 15 to 20 hashtags. Look, I'd say 10. You can use 30 on Instagram, but I think still use, 10, 15 if you can, and you try to make them unique to each post. So try to make them reflect what's contained in the post. So that's really it. And they do matter. They shouldn't be your sole focus on Instagram. They are relevant for Twitter as well, and LinkedIn actually. I find on LinkedIn, which I want to talk about next week, LinkedIn actually matters. Hashtags are quite important there too. Just 2 or 3 though, and same with Twitter. You only need 2 or 3, whereas Instagram you can go quite nuts with them. Facebook you don't probably have. I don't think people use them as much on Facebook. The functionality's there, but it's not as used. I just remembered too, looking at my notes, I've got one more thing related to our last session, which was gathering my writing box, my writer's box.
Yeah.
and how I really dived into some of those old memories of the time I lived in Japan on the one hand, and it prompted me to reconnect with some old friends just for no reason other than because I was looking at old photos. And it also made me realise I have so many cards and letters, I had to sort them into boxes. I had a box for any stuff, a box for cards and letters, and a box for photos, which I separate to my writer's box.
Yeah.
To actually do that felt really great. And it prompted me to write a couple of cards in the last couple of weeks. So my gorgeous cafe called Down the Street in Frankston totally transformed Foot Street in Frankston. That is not an exaggeration, because it's a gorgeous cafe run by a beautiful business owner, Maren. And when it was their 1 year anniversary, I thought, I'm going to go and get her a thank you card or a congratulations card. And I wrote a little note, and do you know what? She cried when she read it.
So I think our little community could do that this week. That could maybe be your homework out there. Give someone a card.
And tell them what you feel. Like, I didn't go on and on, but I just said, you have transformed our street. Thank you so much. It's great service and great coffee and all that. It was lovely.
Wonderful.
And I wrote the same with Dad for Father's Day. I often would think, oh, I can't be bothered, it's just Dad. No offense, but you sort of think, I'll just give him the present. But I got a card, and not only that, I thought about what I wrote.
Wonderful.
And he was really cute. He read it out loud.
Oh.
Yeah, and I could tell he was quite chuffed. So that was a reporting back from my homework.
Fantastic.
That giving those messages out to people is actually worth it.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm about halfway through my erotic character.
Yes, it's possible.
I'm looking forward to you having yours.
Yeah, well, look, thank you. I think we survived the sex scene episode, and
and thank you everyone for listening. And we love your responses. Yeah, it's like a little family.
It is. Thank you so much, and please do share with us your experiences. I know Cindy shared some photos shared a video actually of her gathering her writer's box. And it's so inspiring for us to know that that's happening, and people have. Yeah, actually, and another friend, Jack, of my sister's from years ago, told me he's had a writer's box for years, and he was one of the first writers I ever met. As in, when I was a teenager, he was my sister's friend, so like 5 years older than me, and he was and is a writer, and he really impressed me back then, so I was not surprised to hear that.
But then when I was talking with Jude in Sydney last week, who's really a fantastic editor, she'd never heard of a writer's box, so different strokes, different folks.
Yeah, exactly. So if that works for you, it's certainly been working for me, so
that's great.
Thank you again, and Glow, that's definitely a recommendation. It's quite funny. Yes. All right. Well, I think that's it. And so next week we will have a surprise guest.
We hope so. Yeah.
Assuming I get the technology working, which I should.
You will.
Yeah, I will. We're going to have a special guest, which is going to be really cool for those of you who are interested in learning more about the world of getting published. So it's going to be fantastic. So do tune in, and stay in touch on our Facebook group. Novel Therapy, so just search for that in Facebook. And also you may have noticed we're up on YouTube now, so we've had 3 videos up, I think, or 3 episodes, so we'll get them up now that I have NBN. And
I shouldn't be drinking tea and eating cake, should I?
No,
anyway,
I think that's okay. That's what we do. That's how we do it. So we will see you next time, and thanks again for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.